Excellent. All right, we'll call the meeting to order at 7:21. Apologies for the delay, folks. Let me just run through the board norms real quickly. Number one, maintain our focus. Communicate respectfully, be present, keep the board productive and effective, and respect the agenda. Let me move back to the agenda. All right. Correspondence. I think most of the correspondence was in regards to what we're going to talk about here tonight anyway. So with that, I will move over to members of the public. Members of the public, unless there's something that is not on the agenda that you want to speak to, we will just go ahead and go through the agenda. If there's something that is not on the agenda, just let us know right now and we can discuss it.
Well, no.
I'm sorry, was there a hand?
Yeah, me.
You? Oh, but you're not a member of the public. Out there, members of the public don't see something that on the agenda that they want to speak to separately, please let us know now, otherwise we can address it when the time comes. All right, seeing nobody?
Al, I got one addition.
Yes, sir.
We need a short executive session at the end
Short
for
executive
negotiations update.
Okay. Noted, short exec session on negotiations. Okay, great. All right, let's move on to new business, and we are going to go over some futures protocol data. And first of all, I just want to say what an amazing outpouring of information, thoughtful reaction, commentary, you name it, just unbelievable. And I think Les did an equally great job in distilling it all into this PowerPoint that he will be presenting right now. So without further ado.
Thanks, Al. And I just want to echo those comments. I think that, in a very short time frame, Fiona and Luella orchestrated an incredible process of getting the community access to this protocol for the community, collecting a huge amount of data, and Suzanne did a fabulous job in putting this together. We'll show you where it is so that everybody has access to it. What I tried to do is to identify a few high-level themes that seem to kind of come up over and again, and just make some summary statements. It doesn't reflect everything that everybody said because there's a huge volume of data in there. But hopefully it's kind of captured highlights for you. And we're going to go through that along with some questions that it raised and some possible next steps that the board may want to take action on. So moving through. Again, thanks to the principals as well for taking this process to their staffs and collecting a great deal of data from the school faculties in each of the schools. At last count, there were over 600 individual sticky notes on the board. Some of them were brief and some of them were quite extensive. And I understand there's even more to come. So a great deal of input again, and thank you to all who made that possible. Craig, if you could just hit the link to the website for a minute. We could just take a look at where to find this. If you go to the future planning page.
On the left.
Yep.
And then scroll down, keep going, to where it says Back to the Future, bold and underlined. a little higher there.
Right
In the
there.
current, right, in that current section, see where it says Back to the Future, the link there? Hit that link. And that, well, I may be wrong about that. I thought that was our link to the Miro board. Can we go back a step?
Responses, click here to check out our responses. Down one more yet? I bet that's it.
So what you're going to see here is the board that's been assembled with all of the responses. The ones in yellow were generated in the schools by the faculty of the schools. If you kind of scroll over to the right, the ones in green, which will come up, were the ones that came out of the board meeting last month. And then the ones in pink are generated from the community. And just take a little scroll through that just so people can get an idea of the volume of responses there. So again, tremendous amount of data, and that's available to you through those links on the website, thanks to Suzanne. And I encourage people to have a look and see what the community contributed to this process. So let's move to some summary information here. If we can go back to the PowerPoint. So what I tried to do here is to group some of the information in these 5 categories, which I labeled sustainable change, facilities, elementary schools, secondary options, and school and community. And we'll walk through each one in turn, and then there'll be an opportunity for some discussion and conversation. And then when we've kind of gone through this, there are some suggestions for some motions that the board might want to take to just keep the work moving forward. So any questions before we jump in? Okay, so sustainable change. This really has to do with what can we do, how can we pay for it, can we keep it once we have it. There seems to be some pretty clear agreement that it's time for a plan, and that it's important that that plan comes up with a model that is predictable, allows families to make good choices and understand what their options are, and that it's something that is going to endure for the foreseeable future, that it's both fiscally responsive to the needs of students and the community, and responsible in that it's realistic and affordable. There were many comments solicited about the facilities in the district, and folks want quality buildings, they want quality programs, they want quality staff. Strong emphasis on being able to attract high quality staff and keep the staff here. And of course, most importantly, good high quality educational experience for all the students, and ideally a kind of education that is going to be appealing and would even draw people into the district. Along with that, there were quite a few comments about the funding formula, the state funding formula, and the challenges that presents to this district and similar districts. And a lot of mention about the need to augment that funding in creative ways and looking for ways to seek out grants, to tap into benefactors, and to work with the legislature to revise that formula so that it works better for districts like this. Now, the how all that gets done is to be determined, but that's kind of what people wanted here. So what does this boil down to? And the bottom of this slide, there's just a couple of questions that seem to kind of capture it. And the first one is, what is the community willing and able to afford? And the second being, how have other communities found ways to supplement the public funds, and what have they done? How have they managed that? So let me pause here for now and just open this up for some input and discussion, questions. And I'll try to capture whatever folks say here on this chart. And Craig, you'll keep an eye on the board. I see not too many people are with us right now. Are there any questions or comments about that piece of it?
Mr. Chair, will you accept comments from the public?
Oh, yes, of course. Please.
I would like to ask all of you or whomever it should go to. I attended 2 of these meetings, one prior to this gentleman's involvement and one with this gentleman's involvement. And in both of them, I'd like to just mirror to you, I don't think there were members of the public there. I think that a lot of these comments, a lot of these suggestions, a lot of the complaints, whatever's on the pink slips and the green slips and the white slips, are from people within the educational community, whether they are teachers, administrators, kids, but they are not members of the public outside of the community of the education. And I want to know, are you folks aware of how many members of the public came and participated in this whole adventure? Thank you.
Well, I would certainly say that, yes, we did solicit a lot of community outreach. In fact, we have some folks out here, Luella and Fiona, that directly went to folks out in the public, so we know that they are actual community members. So yeah, we did a lot, and especially with their support, to broaden our search for information and questions and answers beyond just folks that are directly involved in the school district. So yeah, it's quite a bit. Yeah, of those 600 notes, in fact, I think all of those 600 notes were from community members. There was a breakdown between community members, school staff, and what was the third one?
Board.
And board. Yes.
Who has a hand?
We searched far and wide.
I have to. It's Richard and Dana.
Hi, yeah, I was just wondering, like, with all of the you showed the screen with all the Post-it notes on it, and all the individual little notes, but how are you compiling that data to be more useful? Like, I see you've got it, broken down into colors by which, group and, provided the notes, but are they organized by, like, topic? Or how did you weight them, or at least compile them to be more useful?
Oh, that's a really good question, and I'll share what I did with them, because I think to this point I may be the only person who's tried to do that. What I did initially was to read through them and try to group them a bit by category, and I just made a running list using the categories that I showed you initially, and then captured comments that were fairly representative under those lists. And then in the slide deck that we're following here tonight, I've just tried to give a very broad summary of what those responses were. But I think the devil is always in the details. And that's why it's really important that this information is publicly available and accessible, and that why we showed you where it was, because I'm sure there are going to be lots of folks interested in reading through this themselves. You know, I can tell you too that the responses varied considerably. Some of them were very general. You know, things like we want a excellent education for all of our kids. And some of them were very specific, maybe referencing one particular school and some program at one particular school. So, you know, in trying to make sense of this, you know, again, what I did was to try to group some similar things together. But they're not grouped that way on the board. It would take quite a bit of work to do that. And hopefully, as we walk through the rest of the evening here, you'll get a sense for what messages came through, and you know whether there's more that you do want to know about this, and we'll talk about how to get there.
Just so we don't echo. Dana?
Yeah, hold on a sec. I got it fired. Hey, I just wanted to, how do we get to find out what the taxpayers are willing to pay for and afford for our education system? I mean, every time we put up a budget, it gets voted on by a very small percentage of our community. We really don't get a good accurate of who agrees with it and who doesn't.
Are there any members of the board that want to speak to that?
I mean, Dana, I think it's a great question. And yeah, we need to know our limits for sure, right? There may be some things that we think are amazing or that the public brings forth that are fantastic, but they're going to cost us an extra $500,000. So we kind of have to know some boundaries. But as we get this information and we get these ideas and we flesh them out, we can certainly say, yeah, okay, it sounds like a great idea, but it's going to cost, or it's going to raise your taxes by 15 cents. Is that something you folks are interested in? Yes or no? So, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that it may also, what people are willing to pay is going to be directly correlated to what we're providing. So I think you can't, it's not like there's going to be a number that exists. I think it depends on what they're willing to pay for what they get.
Cost and benefit.
We have to decide what that looks like before we could know.
Yeah. Does that help, Dana?
Yeah, it does a little. I just, if they have a problem, the taxpayers have a problem with paying for what they get, they definitely here in Jamaica, so yeah, move on to the next.
Well, I just, one other thought, and you know, this is to be worked out yet, but you know, we think about what happened in the last month and the number of sessions and the efforts to reach out to different aspects of the community and so on, in ways that I think were pretty successful. perhaps a similar kind of process could occur at different stages of your decision-making. And that as you got closer to some specific proposals and ideas, whether they had to do with facilities or educational programming, that there could be a similar effort to kind of go out there to the community, to put out surveys, to sort of solicit the kind of input that would give you a little more of a read about that. It's an important question because ultimately, if the community doesn't support your decisions, then you're back where you started.
Dana, go ahead.
I'm gonna keep running my mouth tonight. Right now, I'm a little concerned that the board does not have the confidence of the communities and the trust. And I would love for us to get that back. So, I think time is of the essence right now. I don't think the communities are gonna give us time to figure this all out. They're gonna want some action before we're ready. Sorry, guys.
No, it's okay, Dan. Is there a particular section of the community that you're referring to? And we just had a 2-to-1 vote on the budget, so they seem to be fairly favorable of it. And so I don't know, is there any particular group that you were referring to?
Well, I mean, we had the community program in Jamaica, and I didn't make it to the early morning thing, but I made it to the town meeting, and there was some discussion about keeping the Jamaica school. There was talk of school choice. High school being school choice. They don't think they're getting out of the high school what they're paying for. So, but the budget passed, but it was by a small percentage of voters. Either the other percentage doesn't care, or we're not doing, not serious enough damage to our district that we get them out to vote.
I agree with you, Dana. That's always a mystery. I mean, it seemed as though there was plenty of outreach on this last one, and to only have, a little over 300 votes, that was just kind of
It was disappointing, frustrating,
Yeah.
from my point of view.
Yeah.
I mean, this is big money, and this is their kids' education, and nobody cares. Come on, somebody's got to care. We do.
That's right. That's right. I'm sorry, Craig.
Oh, no, I just wanted to make sure Fiona was in the right order. So Fiona?
Oh. Oh no, she's muted.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yep, there we go. We got you.
Yeah, okay. So one thing, Dana, I was really excited about in the sessions is that many people were there that don't come to school board meetings, and that many people were saying, we want to help. And so I think what would be really helpful is for the board to leverage the folks that came and to do more outreach, because we realize that you are a volunteer board, and that I think this is an opportunity for the board to take advantage of, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but like to leverage and to utilize the community that wants to help and wants to move things forward. So I think there are people in the community that are willing to help this process. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Fiona, including you. Appreciate all your time and effort. Crystal?
So I just kind of, pretty much what Fiona said. I went to the Jamaica meeting, and there was 8 participants. And I get that it was early morning, and it was tough, and it was town meeting, but we have 4,055 voters, little over 300 participated. So, I mean, it's hard to reach the people that aren't getting involved. Like, I mean, we can't go door to door for 4,000 people. And I think the board has gotten better about the communication, because I always struggled with communication, like, where is it happening, and finding it on the website was hard. But I think we're getting pretty good about the communication, and I mean, people just have to come. They can't not come, but then say we don't like what you're doing.
But this is an observation from an outside observer. At last month's meeting, we went through a process that folks seemed to find valuable. And it came up during that meeting that this would be really useful to broaden and to do with folks in the community, to do with the folks in the schools. And that happened. Did it happen perfectly? Did it get to everyone in every way? No. But it got to more people than previously. And there were some folks, Fiona primarily, Luella Stradner, who kind of took the ball and just started to organize these different events. And I don't want to speak for you, Fiona, but I'm guessing that you're pretty committed to continuing to work on this and open to bringing other people in. And I think that's that the board endorsed that, and let's keep working on it. Let's keep finding additional ways, better ways, you know, having each one bring one to the next meeting or so on, and, you know, be as transparent as possible. Suzanne Paws reorganized the website, and information is much more available than it had been even 2 months ago, and I can attest to that because that's how I tried to learn about your work, and that will continue to grow. So your point was a good one. It's important. It's really necessary, and help us do it. You know, and
My response to that is, yes, it is very necessary. I'm a member of the public. I'm not part of the educational community, although I'm married to one. And I suggest strongly that the board members each identify some kind of gift or skill that they have that they can reach out to the community, not by an email, not by a posting, not by a announcement of a meeting where you're gonna sit and listen. I think this board should get out and get their feet on the ground in some places somehow and get connected, because the community is not connected. They're separate from the schools.
well, there should be a way to organize some listening sessions where when the board has some information that's ready to go out there, that those kind of meetings can be convened in multiple meetings in multiple places. But, you know, just one other comment I'd like to share. Just permit me to digress a little bit here. Last Friday, there was an article in the Boston Globe about the disappearing general stores in Vermont. I don't know if anybody saw that article. It was actually a really well-written article, and it highlighted a few different communities and just the challenges that are faced by the general store in the town and the shift in lifestyle and so on. And one of the wonderful things about life in a small town and in small communities like this is folks like all of you. The fact that residents of the town, members of the community, are willing to volunteer their time, pitch in, and say, let's get this done. I'll serve on this committee. I'll serve on this board. I'll work on this project. And that's, that's not everywhere, but that's here. And everybody who's sitting around this table has another part to their life. You may have families, jobs, other commitments, responsibilities, and still you find time to do this work. But it's not your full-time job. So I don't think any of us can sit back and sort of say, well, do it for us. Maybe more, do it with us. And let me help you do it. And that's the kind of ethic that I think needs to be built on. And there's a very strong nucleus of folks doing that here already. So excuse me for a little extemporaneous soapbox business here. But let's kind of keep walking through the data here and see what else folks said. Craig, could you bring us back to the PowerPoint? So the next category had to do with facilities. There were lots of comments about buildings, lots of comments about wanting green buildings, wanting good air quality, wanting floors that can be easily cleaned and sanitized, access to the outdoors, good spaces for teaching, rooms that were big enough to do team teaching or co-teaching if that were an option, spaces that the community could use, etc. Lots of comments about things like that, and it seemed pretty important to folks. There were comments about renovating the buildings that exist, and there were also suggestions about building a new facility. Now, some of these suggestions were different. Some were, let's build a K-12, and others were, no, let's renovate Jamaica. Let's, or let's build a K-8 facility. So what folks want is kind of all over the place a bit there. And there's still a real difference of opinion between whether elementary schools should stay in their own communities or be consolidated. There are some pretty strong feelings on both sides of that. But to come back to the question of, well, how do we know what people want and what they're willing to support? Well, maybe the first question is, what's possible? I know you've done some internal audits of the buildings to identify some of the capital improvement needs, but maybe it's time for something more than that. Maybe it's time to bring in some outside group to take a look at the buildings and the community and kind of come up with some recommendations for what might be possible. What are the options for renovating a school like Newbrook? What are you looking at if you really want to think about a new building, completely new building? But if you start collecting some information around that, and you have a sense of what's possible and what it would cost, well, that's the kind of thing that can then go back out to the community, and you can make your arguments and see what people think. But you've got to know what you're working with first. So the questions there are, is the construction feasible? What does the community need in order to make an informed decision about the future of school buildings? If you don't look at that, then you're limited by what exists. And that what exists gives you some fairly, narrow options. that not everybody seems excited about. So let me pause there for questions, comments.
Dana?
Yeah, as far as looking into a feasibility and new building or whatever, should we have a committee to find out where we can put one and what is feasible at this time to kind of either rule it out or rule it in? Yeah, I know, it's another committee, but the question's out there, everybody, it was kind of thrown out, oh, we need a new building. Well, we need to find out where we're gonna put a new building. To include all the facilities that we need for either pre-K through 12 or pre-K through 8. We gotta find out if there's any funding in the future that's coming down. If we can't find a location within our area to put a new building and facilities, or we can't come up with the funding, then that pretty much eliminates that down to dealing with what we got existing. And we're gonna have to make that happen.
Do you think that would be equally true for renovation, expansion?
Well, if we can't find a new location and be able to fit, financially build a new building or have a good physical location that can encompass it to whatever size, then renovation is probably our only choice. I mean, I don't know how you guys want to look at it. We can't stay as is, the buildings are getting older. So at some point, we're gonna have to invest money in our infrastructure. If you want to keep it the same, or you want to change it up.
Now, I mean, this is your decision to make. I think that some of the questions that you'll run into are probably best answered by folks with pretty, solid engineering, architectural backgrounds, or there are some organizations also, sort of school organizations that sometimes do this for districts, but it might help to get an outside pair of eyes looking at this too. But again, this is your choice, and we'll be able to come back to this a little bit later, and you can determine what you want to do.
Sure. So I guess at this point I'd throw in there that we haven't decided what students we're going to be taking care of. We haven't decided what programs we're going to be offering those students. So it's kind of tough to build a facility or talk about renovating a facility for an unknown student population and an undefined program of studies. So I think we have got a cart and a horse problem. Let's figure out who we're trying to serve. Based on some of the information I'm sure we're going to hear later tonight, we haven't even defined what the future of this district is going to look like as far as student body or programs. So I would say this is a later discussion. Let's figure out who we're going to serve and what we're going to serve to them. And then design a building or renovate a building to meet that need.
Good point.
Fiona?
One of the ideas that came from the sessions we were doing was that it would be helpful for the school board to connect with the town select boards and the town's planning commissions, because I think they would be helpful in figuring out if there is an actual location within the towns, and so we have to have the town support as well if we want to build a new building, or how we're going to renovate and what that would look like. And so I think those would be great organizations to connect with. And I do think having like an actual feasibility study would be helpful. And I also think, in addition to just a feasibility study of what we can financially afford, it would also be good to have in our back pocket the ultimate dream, because money comes up like this. Like Bernie just sent out something saying that there was a federal allocation of $38 million for innovative projects. But the deadline is April 23rd of this month to submit, right? So like, I think we need to be realistic and what we can do without finding external funding, but also having things ready to go should external funding come up would be really.
Yes, I'm just listening and absorbing what's being said. The gentleman at the end there said, we don't know yet, renovate or build new. We don't know what kind of curriculum we're gonna offer. We don't know a lot yet. That's what I heard. My response is that it strikes me that people are used to looking out for money, out for programs, out for nonprofits, out for agencies that will do the work. My question is, again, does the board know of people in the community who can plumb, who can help supervise a building of a building or renovate a building? Turn the telescope around, get networking with the community and find out what resources are right in-house, so to speak, on the ground, rather than looking out for some nebulous fund, grant, money, program, group, whatever. Can you look at it the other way around and network with the community and find resources? Not necessarily money, but maybe skills. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I'm fairly new, but didn't you guys have an engineer come to Leland and Gray? Did they not do all the schools?
Yeah, they did.
They did one.
Yeah, they came back with
Was
a full
it,
study.
how long ago was that?
2018, 2017?
Not long ago.
Yeah, 2
Oh,
years. Yeah,
2 to 3 years ago?
2.5,
Yeah.
somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So would that still not be usable?
Oh, definitely useful. Yeah, and actually, there's a lot of the stuff that they've kind of chipped away on it with what funding has been available, but it was a very large number. Remind me, was it 2 million?
At least.
I think it was
Yeah,
more like
2.5
5.
million.
I think you're more accurate.
Yeah, it was 5. For
Was
all
it
the
5?
buildings.
It was big.
Yeah,
It was huge.
Wow.
for all the buildings, all the maintenance, all the can kicking. Yeah, it's 5.
But that was just bringing us back to 0. That wasn't improving anything. That was just getting us back to, take care of deferred.
But we could use that list to say, this is what we're looking at, and do we renovate or do we build new buildings, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
I mean, unless we want to pay to have it done again.
Oh, the engineering study?
Yeah.
No.
Well, I'm sure whatever they stated then is probably gone up.
Well, it also depends on their focus. You know, if they were looking at what capital improvements you need, you know, roofs, boilers, you know, et cetera, that's different from looking at educational spaces and, you know, can you put an addition on? Can you build a new computer lab, or you know, can you have a greenhouse, or what, you know, whatever the kind of things that folks are interested in. But let's come back to that. And any other questions or comments about the facilities? So can we go back to the PowerPoint, Craig? So the next area here has to do with the elementary schools. The Future's responses here were kind of interesting. There were a lot of feedback about things that folks would like to see in the schools. Not much that spoke directly to instruction, to the kind of to student achievement, etc. Most of the things that folks were interested in were things like being able to leverage the outdoors and maintaining the farm to school programs, more support for social emotional learning, building on the laughter programs and having before and after school options, etc. Not a whole lot of comment about the academic program itself. There were ideas about thematic focus for the schools. Probably the thing that came up the most was project-based learning or place-based learning. But there was reference to having arts programs or a Montessori program for young students. A whole host of ideas of things that folks thought would be good thematically and would be attractive to folks outside the community, might draw people into the schools. So the questions that I came up with around that were, what would be gained? What are the advantages of school consolidations? And what would be lost? What are the drawbacks? Is it more than just a matter of saying we're going to take 3 schools and make them 2 or make them 1? What would those 2 or 1 schools offer that would be more attractive to families, provide better educational opportunities for students? And I think we'll have some information we can look at a little bit later that Craig is going to share with us that might help think about this a little bit. But would changes in the elementary schools lead to better opportunities for students? Would they lead to more equity for the students and families across the district? Let's find out. So again, questions, comments?
I have a comment, I guess, since no one else is going to. As far as the elementary schools go, when we originally first consolidated into one district, we had our 3 elementary schools. And one of the big things that this board said they were going to do is to make sure that the individuality of each one of those schools, because they each had their own individuality for certain things, and that it was going to stay that way. And then school choice came up, which a lot of students left from Jamaica and came to Townsend because apparently that's what they wanted for whatever reasons. And that school has now smaller hosting of children. And now we want to move, the thing was to move everybody to one campus and keep everybody centralized in Townsend and just pretty much use the two other schools with the most land of the elementary schools and use them for preschools, which is a waste of the resources that we already have. And I just can't see taking what we have and throwing it away to try to make something less into more. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I would agree. It wouldn't make sense to do it as you just described, which is why I think that some work needs to go into what could be gained by doing that. Because it's easy to see what would be lost. But, could something better happen for kids if there were more of them in one place and more teachers per grade level and, more focused kind of teaching? Would there be an opportunity to do that?
Part of that plan was splitting up this room into 4 classrooms. At least something like there was like 4 classrooms going to be in this room. Okay, that's ridiculous. I'm sorry, I don't care what engineer thought that one up. It doesn't work. Okay, my 6th grade classroom in public school was actually down by the boiler rooms, and it was 2 classrooms in one, and what divided it was a set of filing cabinets. And it got very distractive in that classroom. So.
Right, and that's not what you want to set people up for.
I do not
for sure.
I do not want to set anybody up for that.
And there might be some better options.
I can jump in for a second, because I believe we've had this conversation no less than 500,000 times. And we've heard from all of our educational leaders on this. How many times? Many. And I cannot tell you the amount of data we have gathered and reviewed supporting equity and better learning opportunities for kids by bringing the elementary school grades together. Not for an individual child, but for the elementary school population that we serve. We've looked at it, we've identified it, we know that we're not providing equitable education across all of our students. And I'm sure somewhere on the website we could go back to at least a dozen documents that's been provided to us by our teachers and administration about the value of being able to teach with 2 classes, 2 teachers, the value of having more students together so that they have a larger cohort, the value of not being stuck with the same teacher that you may or may not get along with for 4 or 5 years of your elementary school. Like, we could go on and on and on, but I don't think we need to do that tonight because we've all done that enough times that it's starting to get a little repetitive. We could read it.
So, just to be clear, Drew, I'm not suggesting that we do that tonight. I'm just sort of raising the questions. And I think to come back to the point that was made earlier about community involvement and so on, it may be that there's not so much new information that's needed, but that information has to be kind of reorganized and kind of put out there in a way that's a little more accessible, and that the board needs to find some ways of reaching out to the wider community and explaining those things in ways that are understandable not just to parents but to the folks that we're asking to support the schools.
Yes, go ahead.
If the schools are to be kept as they are, where they are, for who they serve, thinking outside the box might bring up some ideas such as rotating the teachers. After a certain amount of time in the Jamaica school, a 1st grade teacher could do a certain amount of time in the elementary school in Townsend, and then a certain amount of time in Newbrook. It would cross-train all your teachers. It would allow some of those gifts that each of these communities are saying they have to be shared with other communities, other schools. Just an idea.
So to be clear, we are one district. So if we did need a 1st grade teacher and they happen to be in Jamaica,
Yeah.
We need them in Newbrook. That is something that we can do already, so, yeah, that's part of the, but yeah, great point.
You caveat that with, if we needed a teacher here, then we could do this. I'm suggesting the opposite. We need to make some change, so don't wait for the if time. Perhaps it's something that this board could focus on now, rotating the teachers, not waiting for an emergency to do that.
No, I'm saying if there was the need, a student need in a particular one of the schools, then yes, we would shift teachers to that particular need, as it currently stands.
So again, I think there'll be a chance to come back to how to move forward with this in a little bit. But let's just kind of keep moving through each of these sections, and then let's get to that. For the secondary schools, there was quite a lot of concern about what people perceive as not enough options for high school students in particular. The comments about this raise questions about opportunities for high achieving students, opportunities for students who are interested in the trades, more in vocational programs, students who had interests more in the arts or in athletics, and that there are just limited opportunities there, and that there are a number of families within the district who are voting with their feet around that, and they tend to be people who have the means to do that, and they're opting to leave for other schools, and there's a kind of have and have not situation within the district, where those who have the means to seek out those opportunities for their kids are doing that, and those who don't are, their kids are not having the same kind of opportunities. So there seems to be a fair amount of support for school choice at the high school level, and I think we'll hear that again when we touch on the survey results that came in. So again, this is this is a challenge that has to be better understood. So what are the outcomes for L&G students? What percentage of students are going on to higher education, to the workforce, to the military, to what are kids graduating from the school and able to pursue their goals. And this is a small high school. There are other small high schools. How does L&G compare with similar schools? Are there things that other schools are doing that can be done here? Are there options, are there ways to expand those opportunities for students? Chances are there's more going on within the school than a lot of people would be aware of. So let's find out. Let's learn more about what's going on here, how this is being addressed within the school, how graduates from L&G are faring, what other schools are doing, and have a more solid information to make that decision about school choice.
I just want to touch on the school choice. So, maybe I'm crazy. I thought we had school choice for 9th through 12th grade. My concern as a parent who wants to have a job again someday, when my kid starts 9th grade, they're probably not gonna have a license, they're not gonna be driving. There's the transportation issue when we go to school choice. I mean, the board can agree to offer transportation to another nearby high school, but they are not obligated to. And they also, I know everybody wants Burton and Vermont Academy, but again, that would be a vote of, do we send our tuition dollars to independent or private schools? I just have a lot of concern over this 9 through 12 choice, because this could also interfere with our school population, because a lot of people can't transport their kids every day. And they're gonna go to a school that has 9 through 12 with bus transportation, or their kid can walk. So it's a pretty big step to go that route.
Okay, so here's that conundrum of, we're hearing, we need to get the trust back of the public. The majority of the public had said on that, and this is only about 140 people, okay, chimed in on this. And about 60 or more % said they want school choice. So how do you go about this conundrum of getting the public is reaching out and saying, this is what we want. This board's gonna turn around and say, we're not doing that. How are you gonna get the trust? You can't get the trust back of the public if the public is telling you this is what they wanna do. Granted, I know this is just a small sampling.
Right.
Okay, I know this. But at what point do you say, well, either you have to step up and speak, or your voice is not gonna be heard? It's just like, if you don't vote, you can't complain. You have no right to complain if you don't go out and vote. So eventually, the whole public knows that this is going on. So if you want to say something, you get out to one of these meetings, you get on one of these polling things, you answer the questions so that we can say, we heard you. We can't hear you if you're silent. That's the problem. So people need to get out there, they need to vote, they need to get out, they need to fill this stuff out. That's what the public needs to do. That's not on the board, that's the public. The board can't, and the other problem with that is, now that we're all consolidated and we have a side by side by side, right? If we closed our high school and went to choice, we would then have to merge with another supervisory union, because we don't have a high school. According to Act 40, or the new act, we don't have if we don't have a high school, we don't have a supervisory union.
I don't think that's true.
That's why we had to have, that's why.
I think River Valley's needed us to have a high school,
Thank you.
right?
River Valley and Marlboro needed us so that we could have.
There was something about that.
That is correct. Learn the law. So see, so there's that problem also that we haven't, nobody even touched on, which is, if we don't have a high school, we don't have a supervisory union anymore, or we don't have a side by side by side, so however they
As it was originally, yeah.
as it was intended. So therefore, will we have to merge with another supervisory union? And if so, if we do, we go back to this committee of 6 from way back when.
All right.
Do we have to pick a home high school? Is that part of the deal
There has to be a high school in the district.
in the district? And we're like
Do we
the
have,
only one in the
do we have
district.
Bill out there for clarification?
So I just want to point out that
One second, Crystal, sorry.
You want me to
If he happens to be out there. Yeah, there he is.
Yeah, Bill is here, and I don't know if we want to cater to the board first, but Luella, and Leanne.
Okay, if we just could have Bill clarify that about the high school.
Yep. Bill, you're on.
Whether you want it or not.
Can you guys hear me? My internet's a little wonky.
Yep.
So is ours.
Okay. That was part of the conversation in 2014, looking for like districts, but that law has since passed. So there is no requirement. You can look at Bennington Rutland Supervisory Union. They're K through 8. You can look at Wyndham South West. They are K through 12. So Ken is correct. At the time of that discussion, after Act 46 passed in 2014, that was a consideration, but that is no longer active in a requirement for operating a district or supervisory union.
So we can sell the school.
Bill, thank you for nipping that in the bud. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.
But that was a very useful discussion though, because there are things that may not occur to many folks that might be relevant to, to a decision like this. And, the fact that, the community is maybe leaning a certain way at this time, is useful to know. But it's maybe more important to get a good read on what's actually in place, what could be done, and what the options and the ramifications are, before going back out to people and saying, let's take another vote on this.
That's, at what point do we decide that this is enough people to weigh in?
I don't think that was it. I don't think we hit
All
that
right.
number threshold.
So
No, we haven't.
Greg,
That's what
sorry.
I'm saying.
Guys,
Yeah, it's Luella,
and then there was somebody else.
and then Leanne.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Hi. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. 2 recommendations. One is to put out a press release to the newspapers about the results of this survey and this initial process, because once more people hear about that, a majority of the population is leaning towards closing Leland and Gray, you're going to get a lot more people chiming in about their opinions on that. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, for all the board members, you are public officers. So when you are out in public at the grocery store running into people, like, this is what you should be talking about. This is your topic of conversation with the general public that you encounter. Talking about this planning and what's going on and getting their input. Like, I think that's really important aspect of your job. So that's all I got.
Agreed. Thank you, Luella. Appreciate it. Leanne?
I just wanted, and Luella sort of actually helped to point it out, I was reading through some of the responses, and I'm not sure that everyone out there that was responding and saying, hey, they wanted a K through 8 with high school choice, realized that that would mean shutting down Leland and Gray, because one of the questions was, is Leland and Gray going to be one of those choices? So I think we need to be really clear on what that would mean.
I agree with you, Leanne. I got that impression too.
I did too.
They didn't understand the ramifications. Yeah, I think you're right.
I also would love to just add that as the conversation eventually happens here, that the idea of equity within that choice, just saying, okay, everyone's got choice now, but like, what does that actually mean to somebody who has a lot of means to make things happen for their family? And what does that mean for somebody who's, a single mom who's working and relies on transportation? And what does that mean for students when you're talking about any extracurricular activities and the ability to participate in those because now you're far away? And anyway, I think all of the ramifications of that and what the equity of that looks like for different people within our district, because we need to make sure it's good for everybody also.
Great point.
So I just wanted to point out that, I support everybody's decision. I just want to make sure that they understand what their decision means. Like, can you transport your child to this school choice you want, because you may not have the option of, you know, the school district doing it. And I don't think people understand that. I think they think we're gonna give you a choice and you're going to Burton and here's your car and we're gonna drive you. Like,
Because they all have limos, right?
yeah.
In that case, I'm sold on the idea.
Well, there are a lot of folks who suggested that the district should purchase some 15-passenger vans for the schools. Maybe this is what they had in mind.
Anything else out there, Craig? All right.
Okay, I think we have maybe one more area to touch on here. And just lastly, a couple comments under the heading of school and community. I mean, there's quite a lot came in around this, but it seemed that folks really appreciated being asked and having an opportunity to voice their opinions. And yes, it's not a perfect process, hasn't gotten to everybody. But it was a step forward, and it was a good step forward. There seemed to be a clear sense that more work like this is going to build the kind of trust that you're looking for. It's going to build goodwill, and it's going to lead to the greater likelihood of whatever decision you ultimately reach being supported. So this is work that needs to continue. You know, it's not easy to do. You don't have a senior center. You don't have you know, community gathering places that draw people here. So in some ways you have to create them, and you have to leverage things like the Front Porch Forum and so on. And you know, you're fortunate to have folks out there in Zoom land who are willing to take this on and lead this charge. But you know, they can't do it alone. There was also some interesting comments about students and students in the community. I think most of these were geared more towards the older students, but you know, some real interest in finding community connections so that kids could have internships, so that their kids who had an entrepreneurial bent could be developing projects and leading projects in the community. That there were perhaps some connections with local businesses that could be leveraged further. You know, again, maybe some of these things already exist in some form. Maybe some could be expanded, or new ideas, but it seemed to be another place that people were looking for closer ties between school and community, and that is, you know, through students and students being active within the community. So, you know, questions that this raised here is, you know, one is, can this community involvement be sustained through volunteer efforts, and in this case through the volunteer efforts of essentially 2 or 3 people. And how is what is the best way to maintain close communication with your town boards? It's absolutely you know, important and going to be helpful. So how to make that happen, you know, is kind of a standing question. So, any thoughts about this before we move to some suggestions? And I know we touched on this at the very
If the
beginning.
board or a representative of the board was going to meet with the select board, they would have no authority to do anything because it's only a member of the board. So it's kind of ineffective unless you're sent there with a charge to give X amount of information or compile X amount of information. So, you know.
Well, I would agree, yeah. I mean, you can go and attend the select board meeting, but not much purpose
Unless you
to it
bring the
unless
whole,
you have-
unless we bring the whole board with us.
A joint board meeting?
Joint board
A
meeting.
summit?
Yes.
That's a word.
Meeting of the minds. Yeah.
The warnings work on that, Sarah.
Go ahead.
I'm just responding to what I'm hearing as a member of the public. The board, are you limiting your scope to the Townsend board? There's a board, I believe, probably in each of the towns that belong in this district.
No, that's what I mean, any town, or
Okay.
every town.
Okay, so a summit of all the boards would be a smart move to have sitting opposite your table so that each community could be heard for their own individual assets and wishes. To talk about one person from this board going to one board is very narrow. But to talk about a summit of one member from each of the town boards, select boards, sitting with all of you folk might be a good way to go.
Thank you.
Anybody? All right, I think we're good, right?
You want me to go to next steps?
Yeah.
So here are some suggestions of some steps that might help to start pulling together the information that would be helpful. And you know, take them one at a time. I'm sure there are people in this room who would know an awful lot about that very first one. What have the budgets looked like over the last several years? What's per pupil spending look like? What's the tax rate data? How has that changed over time? And, you know, would it help to pull that together again in an accessible way and get that out there for public information so that anybody who has questions about budgets and what people are spending can just go right to that section of the website and not have to necessarily read through the entire budget, but can kind of get the highlights of that. Is that something that would be useful?
Coach?
I think it would be extremely useful. The challenge is that in the last 5 years, we've changed the way that we do our budgeting. So the money's been under the cups and the cups have been moved. So that you can't compare unless we were to ask the administration to actually put all that money back where it belongs. We can't compare because we've been offloading budget items and sending them into SU budgets and bringing them back as fees and charges, and some of them have stayed over there and some of them are shared. So you're really not comparing apples to apples if you look at 5 years worth of budgeting, unless someone does a whole lot of work to try to line things back up.
I think it's a good point, and plus the fact that I think 5 years would be prior to our inception as a board, but I think it'd still be useful to see, and I agree with you that some of these are now part of something that we pay to the WCSU as opposed to, but most of those have, I don't think there's been a lot of shifting, maybe 2 or 3 line items that have gotten shifted. I don't know. I mean, I'd see what everybody else thinks, whether it'd be worthwhile to have the data for what they could pull.
I think that the basic cost per pupil, like we know, like the big picture. I don't think most people are gonna be interested in going through line items in our budget necessarily 5 years worth. I mean, I can't imagine anybody thinks that's a good time. So it's probably gonna be a big picture anyway. So if it's probably not 5 years back, but something that is a loose overview at least, I think people would understand both how the population has changed and how the cost has changed.
Key data points.
What would be the right data points?
Student numbers,
And staff numbers,
staff numbers.
number of positions at each level,
An ADM, not equalized people.
Yeah.
like actual student numbers?
Yeah.
Not
Butts and
making
chairs.
kids, real kids.
Yeah, and then the cost per student.
Per pupil cost?
Yeah.
So staff, ADM, per pupil. And tax rate,
Yep, that's a good one.
kind of important.
Yeah.
With or without incentives.
Oh yeah, level it. How are you gonna do that?
Seriously, it's.
Well, I mean, I think we can just show the tax rate. So what they're talking about is, as part of the act, we were given a kind of a scale down of, I think it was 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. And where, are we in 2?
We just
We're in
used
2.
2, yeah, we're not
We
last
just used
one.
2. So it kind of to buffer as we went into this transition, they gave us extra on the tax rate. So.
Do you wanna
The
share-
reality of it was the
Do you wanna show
first
the
4
budget?
years, we were guaranteed to go up
What's
2
that?
cents without even moving your budget.
Do you want to show the budget with the penalties
So I'll go without
and without the
penalties.
monkey yields for the last 2 years? What the tax rate should be? Not,
And you know how long those are gonna last?
not the artificial make-believe?
The excess spending threshold I believe, is gonna last for another 5 years.
How about the
So-
yield?
That's a good question. I think that was all part of the same package deal. So, but, yeah, understood.
It's a lot of moving parts.
It just makes the number, as you plot it across, all of a sudden you're like, what happened? Well, this excess spending threshold was suspended, so it changes the tax rate significantly. And most people just looking at the number marching across the screen are not gonna understand that there was a significant funding formula change. It had nothing to do
Every
with.
year.
With, the union becoming more efficient or anything like that. It was a funding formula change that changed their tax rate.
It's really hard to compare these things.
It really is.
The more we talk about it, the more
It's
futile it seems.
It's apples to kiwis.
Yes.
And-
And hippopotamuses.
Yeah.
Well, but if you can't talk about it, how can you expect folks to?
We could talk about it, there's just no way to logically break it down that'll track.
How about this? So we have those key data points, and then, I mean, Lori does always a great job of kind of the underlying assumptions. Here are some key things that you need to know about what went into that number or numbers. Would that be helpful?
Maybe even if it's 2 chunks of data where we take one, this is what actually happened, so you can see this and relate to this. And another one that is, if we were to shimmy it up and figure out how to make it at least all the same fruit, then we could compare things a little bit more. And it's not gonna be numbers that you've ever seen, because there were incentives, because there were funding formula changes, but at least then you're looking at the things that we are actually doing and the cost of those things.
And I think Lori does that as well. Like, she did show, hey, if we didn't have the excess spending threshold, this is what it would look like.
Right.
So I think she does some of that already
Right,
anyway.
but so just anyway, two kind of easy graphics would be awesome.
How about dollars spent? Is that an easy, to compare it just an actual dollars spent? That seems like
probably
the easiest one.
That's the easiest one.
Yeah.
Rather than the
Yeah.
formula before the formula. Can we do it that way?
That would probably confuse everybody completely.
Well, I was just thinking that might be the easiest way for people to look at it, because our dollar spent is relatively consistent versus the formula, which has been driving things up and down all over the place.
The other reason I would love it, I like the idea of having a budget and then dollar spent is, I mean, Lori does an amazing job every year of finding every nickel that she can possibly save, and we have never spent the budget in my memory, so I think that would be a good way to tease that out.
And we could even
I
go
like that.
back before the district, because we could add up the dollars spent for all of the separate school districts before that to get that 5 years.
I don't want to steal this gentleman's thunder. Are there more next steps that you're suggesting, sir? Because if not, I have.
Oh, yeah, there
There are.
another
There
page
are-
of them.
There are four in total. But, is this a motion that the board wants to maybe amend and entertain? Or is it something you need to do more thinking about?
Good. Let me see if I can try to capture everything that we wanted to look at. Staffing, levels of staffing, like FTE. Are we, okay. Are we looking at just teachers, paras, the whole nine?
I think we need to look at all of it, because that,
All of it.
Administration, teachers, paras.
the ones we contract for, because that
Oh,
makes,
yeah, the
that makes it look
specialists.
funky, because they don't work for us anymore, but they kind of work for us still.
All staff.
Yeah.
Got it. ADM, per pupil spending, tax rate, dollars spent. Yeah, dollars spent versus, as well as the budget. And if possible, over 5 years, or do we need 5 years back?
Well, 2 years back is gonna give us pandemic numbers. So if we don't go beyond 2 years, the last 2 years don't mean anything, because that's just garbage money. Like, nothing's normal. So we have to go at least be before that to see anything regular.
Yeah.
We're in the 2 cents, so we've been a district for 5 years.
Yeah. It's true.
Is that your 2 cents, Joe?
Yep.
All right.
Good math.
Okay.
Not so much math, it's just logic.
All right, I will make that motion then, since I have it in front of me. Make the motion that the administration can present us an overview of the WRED budget, staffing, ADM, per pupil spending, tax rate, and dollars spent over the last 5 fiscal years.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? I'm good?
I'm good.
Good. Anybody else? All right.
Let's do it.
You'll have to pull that down so we can, I think we still have Dana and, I'm not sure who else out there.
Dana.
Emily was on.
Is it just Dana?
You want an eye?
Sure, we'll start with you, Dana, go ahead.
I'll give you an eye.
Thank you. Don't give me your eye, please.
Is Emily out there still?
I think Emily had
She
to
left.
leave. All right, we'll go out here now. Crystal?
Aye.
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 Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Motion carries unanimously. Your first aye, your first vote. All right, thank you. So that was one.
So the next one's hopefully will be a little simpler. The second one is, again, sort of asking the administration for your next meeting in May to solicit proposals from a third party to examine possibilities for renovation and/or expansion of existing buildings and the feasibility of new school construction. It's not saying you're going to go spend any money, but it just means going out there and getting some proposals, or getting a sense of what folks can do for you and what it would cost to do that.
I'll go back to my previous statement. Until we know the other answers to the questions, I think this is really premature. Are we asking them to build a planetarium on top of this building? Because that's our course of, I'm serious.
Yeah, I know.
Our course of studies? Are we looking to do a single campus K-8? Are we looking to keep 5 elementary schools? Like, what are we asking for a proposal to do? There's to me, there's way too many questions. Like, we could ask a third party to, what? Like, what do you want to, what do you want to give me a price on? I can tell you that it's going to be from somewhere between 0 and,
A bajillion.
yeah, an F-35, like somewhere in the middle. Like, I don't have no idea what that means. So I think this would be a giant waste of somebody's time. And money.
I think it's a really good thing to do eventually.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that we can do it, I don't think we can do it yet. But I think it's something that we leave on our back burner, and after we have more conversations, come back to it.
Yeah, change the date on it. July 4th, right?
July
July
4th. Yeah, we need to tweak that too.
Yeah, I know.
Well, you're gonna really
All
see
right, so
fireworks.
table this. Is it?
Yeah.
Everybody agree?
Table it.
The voice from
The voice from behind the slide.
Wow. Okay, yes,
Is that the
Dana.
wizard speaking?
Yes, it was.
Pay no attention to the
Man,
man
that's
on the
encouraging.
slide.
Sorry. Okay, then the next two are similar. The first is to establish this again is a request to the administration to put this together, to establish and oversee a secondary school task force that includes administration, teachers, board members, and community members that would describe the existing course options, identify potential for expanded opportunities for students, and examine the fiscal impact of school choice, including the impact that might have on the community. And that's a little bit of a bigger task, so maybe that's something could come back to the committee in June with our report. And I think that would give you at least more of a basis for thinking about this school choice questions, and give you something to go back to the community with, and saying, here's what we're doing, here's what we found, here's what we could do, here's what it would mean.
I think based on Drew's and others' earlier point, the piece about school choice, we could probably shelve that part of it, but do we want to have a detailed view? And so you're really asking them to talk about the options that we currently have, those that are intimately involved with the administration, teachers, well, everybody, board and community members, to see whether or not we have what we need, and if not, what are the potentials for opportunities.
I am interested, oh, sorry.
You go ahead, Drew.
I am interested in getting more information on the impact of school choice on families. Because this is, in Jamaica, this has been a recurring theme for, I don't know, 20 years. And we studied it when I was on the board in Jamaica, and one of the things that we kept coming back to is splitting between the haves and the have-nots again. Back to the transportation is a huge barrier to opportunity when you live in this valley. And one of the advantages to Leland and Gray being so centrally located is, though we all love driving Townsend, which we all do, 2 or 3 times a day, driving to Brattleboro, driving to Manchester, is much further. And every time we looked at it, every time we started really trying to figure out what the impact was going to be, what we figured out was that students without means are going to have less opportunity. So that's a piece of information I'd like to see. If there's a group of smart administrators and citizens that can put that information, like what does it look like for that student that doesn't have transportation? Where do they get to go to school, and what extracurricular programs do they get to participate in, and how are they going to do that?
That's a good point. That would definitely shine a light on that earlier subject about whether or not we really do want to have our kids shipped out, or, yeah. That's a good
And
point.
you have other communities that are doing this, so what's happening, to kids in those communities? What's happened to towns that have closed their high schools? And what would the economic impact on your own community be if you were to do that? I'm guessing there are probably a fair number of people employed here from this community. What does that mean? Is there a way to look at that? But the transportation issue, I mean, there are lots of interrelated pieces here.
I'd really like to know the high school dropout rate after these towns went school choice for 9 through 12 or closed their high school together.
Good point. Go, Lindsay.
In reading the comments, I got a general impression that people that were looking for choice, a lot of the reason for that was because they felt that what was currently being offered at Leland and Gray was not sufficient and that they could get a better offering from another school. So in addition to looking at what we are currently doing, I think it would be wonderful to have the administration look at what are things that action steps we can take immediately. Like, forget what the board is doing. The administrators are also running these schools. And what are action steps, knowing this information and how people feel about it, that they could take immediately I know there was talk about like enrichment came up, and academic rigor, and I don't know, other terms that were used, but however people are feeling, that's valid. And I would just love for that to get addressed in terms of what are we doing, how accurate of a statement is it? It's one thing to say, well, I feel like nothing is offered. Well, is nothing offered? Let's look at that, and also look at what are things we know we can do to provide a better education.
I think it's a great point, Lindsay, and we've talked about this before, and like we have this magic date of October 1st where the whole world's going to change, but there's a lot we can do before that, and should if we can. So great point.
I just actually want to piggyback onto what Lindsay just said. I saw on CAX that Linden Institute up in the Northeast Kingdom now has a program, and probably through CCV, it's probably accessible to a lot of us other high schools, where their students can graduate with an associate's degree from college while getting out of high school. And if we could do something like that and use resources like that we probably already have access to, I think that would be bringing value to our students in our community. So.
That's great.
And I would just, one more thing about that is that in having lots and lots of conversations with people in the community about this, I know there are already people who are choosing to send their kids outside of the district. And I hear more and more talk of, well, maybe we're interested in thinking about trying to do this. I think I understand where you're coming from with the desire to have the best possible thing for your children. Yes, that is your job. You need to do that. It's also our job to make sure that we're encouraging the best thing to be happening. So maybe it will help at least hold on to, if not bring back, some of these families while we're continuing these conversations about long-term vision. I know there are immediate things that can happen. Gotta be.
And not only providing the best opportunities, but marketing that we're doing
Yes.
that as well, right? And
Absolutely.
I think that was a great point. Go, Joe.
So high school choice exists now. Can we get the data as to what the utilization is? How many students actually? Pick a time frame, maybe the same 5-year period. We offer high school choice now to public high schools. I don't get the sense that we have a lot of students that do that. So, but I don't know that number, and I don't think I've ever asked for that number, so I'd be curious.
All right. Bill, do we need to tack that onto a motion, or you got that covered?
Tell us.
No, you don't have to tack that onto a motion. This is just a direction to the administration. I'm just taking notes, trying to make sure that we get your questions answered, and then we have the ability to rewatch this video and make sure we get these questions answered. But no motions necessary.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think so. Yeah, that's a good one though. That's very good. All right. So
we got one more.
Yeah, I was going to ask, Bill. So do we need a motion at all on this section, or is it just a direction?
No, but just reading that first slide, I'll want some direction on when it says administration, teachers, board, and community members. That's a big group, and so I'd like some direction about what does that mean? Does that mean
everybody?
A couple administrators, a couple teachers, a couple board members, and an invite to the select board chair? Or, I need a sense of what that means, because as you all know, having a board of 11 is a big deal. Ideally, we'd want between 5 and 7. So I would like a sense from the board of how many people are we thinking about here?
What do you think? I mean, that sounds about right. 5 to 7.
5 to 7.
Good cross section of what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good, Greg.
Okay, I can work with that.
I think just the question is, how would we go about picking the community members to be involved? Because a lot of people are going to be interested in providing input, and definitely people in this room. So how do we go about doing that? And still limiting that 5 to 7 number that we want. We'll definitely need some
Random
directions.
draw out of a hat. Everybody who's interested, call Bill at home. No.
Bill's number, I can give it to you.
How about a person from each town?
Well, he was suggesting select board, Bill suggested select board chair. Let the select board send somebody. Whether it's chair or just a member of the select board, but then you've got the town perspective, or at least the official town perspective.
Thoughts?
What question, are we talking about the high school question right now? Is what we're asking this group to do? I'm not sure the select board chair is going to be the best person to answer the high school questions. That may not be our best choice. Because they may not be willing and engaged to participate in the number of meetings it's going to take to generate that information by the first week of June. And I can tell you, as sitting on committees that have worked on this, they're going to need to meet weekly for a long time to come up with this type of information. And I also would encourage the administration to find someone that doesn't agree with the administration to put on, because there's certainly both sides of this opinion out there, so make sure you have somebody that doesn't agree with you.
The other option we have is that each one of our schools already has developed and already uses their PAC.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
a good
we
idea.
already have our parent volunteers,
idea.
and I can speak specifically for mine, that I'm on both ends of that, agree with Craig and not agree. But that's what that advisory part is, right? You advise me on how to make some decisions. So we could come back to our PAC and ask them if anyone would be willing to work on a weekly basis until June.
Does the high school have one?
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's a great idea.
For each. Yeah.
Okay, we got some momentum. Here's an idea. 2 administrators from the secondary search and 2 administrators for the elementary search. I'll talk to the Association of Teachers, and like Lindsay said, they can go ahead and assign us, any interested people, up to 2 for the secondary and up to 2 for the elementary. And then board, you guys can decide up to 2 board members for the secondary and up to 2 board members for elementary. We'll go to the PAC for 1 more, and then we'll invite each select board to every meeting. They can attend if they want or not. How about that?
I love it.
That sounds great. Perfect.
You're gonna have to spend about a year to get the select boards up to speed with what we do.
Well, just send them the video links, Dana. Here's your homework. Watch all this before you come.
Thank you, Dana. All right.
Oh, you can binge it in a weekend.
So board, you guys have to decide, how are you going to decide the board members that are going to attend these meetings?
Do we have any volunteers right now?
Which one? High school.
High school?
Let's see who else is gonna volunteer. I'll go where I'm needed. How about that?
Lindsay, I'd love you on the elementary.
I bet you would.
Well, you can be on the high
Wow. Bet you would.
I can do the high school too. Doesn't make sense for, I mean,
All right.
I can do elementary, but.
Well, Crystal, I think it's really good for you to think about being on the high school level, because in a couple of years when all this starts to go, what you want it to look like. So I think that's really important.
Fine.
Elementary, dear Leanne.
I don't know. We didn't have enough to do. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's the slow time of
When are
year.
you,
Yeah,
when are
yeah.
these meetings gonna happen?
Ask Bill.
Wait. So I got Drew and Crystal, secondary. I got Lindsay and who, elementary?
Leanne.
Thank you. Okay. Here's what I'll do. I'll reach out to Craig. He's there. Scotty and Bob, and we'll have them arrange with those four board members. They'll invite the Teachers Association. They'll reach out to their PAC and set up a meeting, first meeting for next week. And I agree with Drew, at that first meeting, they're going to need to set their working meetings so that they have something ready by the end of May. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Craig says he loves it. It's a great idea, and you can even do it in half
Yeah,
that time.
I
if you
can
need
see
it.
his face right now, right? Okay, I will follow up on that tomorrow.
Thanks, Bill.
So that pretty much covers what we had here. I know this has gone longer than we anticipated. We had other things on the agenda. You might want to decide if there's some things that we would best defer to May.
Yeah, I think so.
B and D are going to be covered in these task force. But I think C would probably be interesting in May.
Yeah, I agree, Bill. All right. In old business, community outreach.
Suzanne Paw asked that this be on a standing line of the agenda so that she can have an opportunity to share what has happened and what will happen each meeting that we meet.
Perfect. The floor is yours, Suzanne.
Hello. So I'm going to have Luella and Fiona talk a little bit about the community meetings that they organized. I was able to go to 2 of those, mainly, well, one to participate and mainly to get the information onto that big sticky note board that you all saw. And just like a tech note on that, it's zoomable. So when we were looking at it on the screen share, it's really zoomed in, and you can use your mouse or your trackpad to go in and out, so you can see how much is there, go in a little deeper and read things if you want to get into that. The website is kind of the place where I'm trying to host as much updated information as possible. So if people are wondering where information is, that's the place to go. It seems like the most equitable place to put stuff. If you're not on Facebook, if you're not on email, lists with principals, you can at least find that information. And the newsletters have gone out to schools. I think there's still room for that to get into the wider community. We tried to put them at town halls. I'm not sure if people knew they were there, but I think that should be something people know about that, are not in the schools. And what else? We are on Front Porch Forum now, so we're able to kind of get into that community part a little bit more. And then the survey that we put out early on in March, we got 178 responses, and there is all that data on the website as well. But it's kind of, an early look at stuff, and I think, like we all are noticing, there's a lot more to unpack before we decide that we're going to take that information and make decisions on it, specifically the school choice stuff. There's also lots and lots of comments if people want to look through them. But, a lot of good ideas, a lot of questions, a lot of responses. Definitely more room to get more people involved for sure. So the more we can do, the better. And I'm open to suggestions. I mean, we could even think about postcards, physical things sent in the mail, maybe. That's where I'm at. And I'll let Luella and Fiona chime in on what they want to talk about in terms of what they've been doing. Yeah, I can talk. I don't know if Fiona's still here, but and feel free to join in, Fiona. We had a couple of meetings, as you all know about, 3 of them. We had between 8 and 12 people show up to each one, which in my opinion is not very many, but they were very rich conversations, very generative, lots of amazing ideas, beautiful, beautiful vision for the future of our schools. So I think that was really needed. It was really needed for people to be able to share and to be heard, and to have that forum. And so I think that type of situation needs to be available at the different, major milestones or decision points or, data points or whatever along this process. We put boards up in the stores, the general stores, and those were not very well populated. Very few responses on those. Also possibly not well advertised, that people knew that that was something they could engage with. So we thought that was the general store is the quintessential Vermont gathering space. We thought that was a logical place to put those, but the exercise was not as productive as we had hoped. And then posting on Front Porch Forum with links to the survey on the website, and also I think in the principal emails, at least at Newbrook went out, and that's where we got those responses from. Again, I think only 14, at least when I checked on last day I checked, was only 14 responses. So again, not very many. Lots of ideas from those 14 people. But yeah, I think we did an amazing job with 2 weeks notice, 1 week to get the word out and 1 week to do it. But to do this, I think we need a little bit more of a stir and to get more people aware of what's going on, so they can get involved if they choose to. Obviously not everyone's going to get involved, and that's their prerogative. So, but for those that want to be involved, we have to make sure that we've reached them. So I don't know if you have anything to add, Fiona. Or maybe you can't talk, I'm not sure, but yeah, I think it was it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, Fiona has this muting thing, so. And no. Yeah, so Suzanne, Luella, Fiona, thank you so much for everything that you did, as you said, in that very short period of time. That was incredible, and I think it'll only get better. It's like a groundswell, right? We just started it and continue to do it. It'll gain momentum, and the 8 people will turn into 20 and 30, and just more people will get involved. So really appreciate it.
And Suzanne, can you take down that one sheet on the website that says these meetings start at 6 o'clock?
Yeah, that was fully my mistake. That was an old, yeah.
Yeah, I know, it was an old
That
one.
will be corrected. Sorry about that. That was my fault.
No biggie.
No worries.
And what was the other thing?
Suzanne can't own that all herself.
Yeah,
It's
we already said
here.
that.
It's Bill and Suzanne together on that one.
No problem. Starting early.
In the the 4th of July.
That's right. Okay, anything else listed? No? We're good? Okay, so we did have an executive session that was added. And other than that, our next meeting is on May 2nd. So, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. And we will move on to the executive session.
Is there any action taken after the executive session?